Thank you to everybody for, there's something about this comprehension of life that it gets us beyond ourselves and beyond our individual needs and desires and wants, and it's very altruistic, but very much rewarded, and it's what it brings back. So I'm grateful for that dynamic and how that works. So I wanted to address, let me just leave this up here for a second. So one of the things that I can think of to say about many of the questions, not all of them, but many of them, and is something that is going to be new for us all, is the idea essentially of no thought or things not being needed to think about them, to do them, to practice them, to try them, but something that occurs just in the flow, in the way that we all function. We are resilient, and we get over things. Sometimes it takes a little while, sometimes it takes a little longer while, but this establishing the preeminence of resilience, how that works within us all, and how there's nothing to do to have to generate it or make it happen, or try to make it happen, or try to instill it or do it, is a really radical idea that, as I've said, takes thinking off your mind. And so this is a shift, because we've all been really conditioned to try. And this has something about working in a way that we don't create, we don't do. So it takes the ego out. The ego is that little purposeful wanting to accomplish, make things better, change things. And getting the ego out, it allows you to be a change agent without being stressed about it or effortful. There's something effortless about resilience that is so cool and so wonderful to recognize and be grateful for, and to appreciate that that it's not done by your hand. In fact, it's sort of the opposite. The more you try to be resilient, the behinder you get. You know, the harder you try, the behinder you get, sort of thing. So there's something about the nature of resilience that is effortless.
Resilient microphone.
We need yeah.
Okay, keep going.
All right. So, and I know people want to know, hey, I want to spread the good cheer. And of course you do, because you're all people helpers and you all want good things for the world and your family and what have you. And so, good for you. That's why I'm here, and that's why we're talking. So go for it. But there's a few things that might be, better understood about that we'll discuss in this next section, and maybe a few questions might address that. But it's hard to get the doing out of resilience. And but that's its way. It has its own nature. It doesn't require us to make it happen. If there's doing in there, there's outside in there. And we can take that step now. So one question. When and forgive me if these aren't quite all tied together, but they're questions. I wanted to just speak to a few of them. When I approach a stressful situation, patient or person, I try to understand. Now, I'm not being picky, but I'm just trying to highlight something here. Try to understand. When you try to understand, which we all want to understand, if there's trying in there, it's got a little bit of doing, okay? I try to understand their position, and listen, I try not to take their blasting personal. Is this a form of resilience? Well, it is, but you might say a deeper form of resilience, or the deepest form of resilience would not be trying, it would be being present, being in the presence of a deeper intelligence that is insightfully guiding you, helping you, that doesn't take effort. It requires nothing of you to be there. So to speak, it's kind of like the absence of doing something is the manifestation of something beyond yourself. If I'm so lost in the past of hurt, how do I, or what can I do? How do I, or what can I do, and need to do to change my way of thinking, to return to reality? I like the way she puts that, and become more resilient. So coming to reality, that's a beautiful way to say it, because back to reality. You know, they used to, what was the movie? Back to the Future? Back to reality. Back to reality is where resilience lives. It's not in. There's a dynamic truth about reality, and we all want to be more and more in touch with reality. And when we get in touch with our thinking or our reactions or our misunderstanding, is when we kind of abort reality or leave reality and go into reactions and judgment. So this is, I like that idea of a return to reality. Another really important question is along the same lines. How important are the concepts of forgiveness and confrontation in this paradigm, or are they important at all? Really good question. I don't think they really quite pertain. Because forgiveness, like if you understand how it works, forgiveness is so almost second nature. Forgive yourself, forgive others, becomes a reality. You're in touch with reality when you forgive. Now, sometimes we're so out of touch with reality that we have to forgive in order to move forward. So you have to think about it, you have to think about what happened to you, and you have to process it. But the processing of resilience is not quite, in a sense, you're in the outside somewhere trying to get back inside. And there's no problem with that, except there really isn't an outside. That's the big problem. The problem is, Sidney Banks said once, that I love this quote, he said, there's nothing outside that can help you. There's nothing outside that can hurt you, because there is no outside. Well, that was a really kind of a stopper to hear that. So I see people writing it down. There's nothing outside that can help you. There's nothing outside that can hurt you, because there is no outside. So establishing the reality of the inside as the truth, and what that brings to you in terms of insight and experience, makes the outside an illusion. So that's one of the reasons why we put that big red X on that diagram, and it's up here, is that if there's nothing about the outside that is real or important or necessary or even in existence, we're going to learn to live more and more inside out, live more and more in touch with reality, live more and more in touch with the experience of insight as being our true companion, our true resource. And an insightful nurse, an insightful teacher, an insightful business person, an insightful child is within the means for every person on earth. And if we could learn to live in that reality, the reality of insight, our evolution would kick into another gear. And because the obstacles that are now holding us back would be known as misunderstanding. We could drop them. We could drop ego, drop outside thinking, drop outside sources for our own experience, drop misunderstanding, drop reactions, drop ignorance, drop illness, misunderstanding, psychological illnesses, and so on and so forth. That is the secret to nursing and the secret to life. How can you help someone become inside out in stressful situations, to become less depressed and be set free to resilience? Is there a process? Well, there's not. But isn't it great that there's not? Like, if there was a process, we'd all be doing it 24/7. Let's say that there was discovered that what you got to do to be resilient and to help someone else be resilient is keep your fingers crossed. Let's just say. That's a simple one, right? Well, if it took that, there would have to be a complete redesign of coffee cups, because the handles just wouldn't work. They'd have to make them a lot fatter, and there would be an awkwardness. Pencils, belt buckles, shoelaces, there would be a lot of changes in store. If there was any process, method, or technique that was worth its salt, here's the thing about techniques, is that something worked for someone at some point in time, like do this rather than that, think this rather than that. But then it became advice, or it became a thing to do, and they failed to take into account that it didn't work for the next moment or the next person. It might have been good at one moment in time for one person, but then to prescribe it ruined it, because There was no, it wasn't of that nature. It was insight in the moment that made it work. But the adopting it as a process to get to insight in the moment ruins the nature of it, or it betrays the nature of it. The nature of it is you are capable of insights that will help serve you in the moment more better than any process or method or technique. So that's why the doctor, the CEO of the hospital said, my goodness, you guys are onto something really huge here, because all the other methods of resilience and burnout prevention and stress prevention that we have in our hospital are all after the fact. They're trying to undo something that is in thought in the first place, and this reverses the field of it in essence, moment to moment to moment. So it puts it right in the hands of the thinker without making them have to do anything to make it be real. It's already real and already happening, and they've already done it 1,000 times. And they're going to get more focused inwardly to have it become a lifestyle. And I like that for my people. What's the difference in breaking negative thinking patterns and positive thinking? Well, the paradigmatic difference is both of those, breaking negative thinking patterns. A negative thinking pattern has no life of its own. It's just set in motion, and it becomes like my story about Valda. Let me think again about this unfair circumstances. And unfair circumstances are often, they're kind of the most common reason for outside-in thinking. Some injustice was done, and now I deservedly harbor it and think about it and wish it would have been different. And it doesn't seem like that it has anything to do with my thinking that I'm feeling the hurt of that incident. And so breaking a negative, like once you see the logic of how it works, the negative thought habit is broken immediately, because it has no life of its own. You just believe that it did. So it's in the misbelief that the thing had the power in the first place that you misunderstood. And so when you start knocking this off, it goes deeper in a hurry. So you get to unravel yourself not only from specific instances of your misunderstanding of where your feelings are coming from, but you start to take out big chunks of it, because it's like the universal solvent. It's like, we've got something at home. It's like, I think it's called Stuff Off or something like that. But if you got any Stuff Be Gone, you got Stuff Be Gone, and you put that on a sticker or whatever you got going on that you don't want to have there. Stuff Be Gone will get rid of what's holding it together. So understanding how this paradigm works, it unravels all the psychopathology you got is now, its days are numbered. You've got the solvent for all your psychopathologies. And humanity's got the solvent for all its psychopathologies. Because it's a misunderstanding. The glue is held in place by misunderstanding, and you've got something, there's one obstacle and one deeper solution, and it'll work on all of them. So it doesn't matter to me anymore what diagnostically people show up with their various and sundry psychopathologies, you might say. But I have to communicate this to them, so I can't just say, shut up and let me tell you the answer. It's your thinking. If you find yourself wanting to say that to your family or friends, bite your tongue, because you have to teach this to people. You can't just preach it. You have to get it for yourself. You have to understand how you miss it, and you'll get a compassion and a fun and a patience. And sometimes you don't have to say anything. You just let people will come around, you know. It really does go back to the adage, take the log out of your own eye. Like with my dad for years, in his absence, my mom, my dad's sister, me, anyone else who was around that knew my dad, when he wasn't around, we would all roll our eyes and say, he's such a worrywart. He worries just like his mother. I've heard that 10,000 times. He's just as bad as his mother. His mother was a worrywart, and he's a worrywart too. And so I had this, I grew up with this opinion about my dad's worrisomeness. And I didn't know that I was forming a callus over my own judgment and justifying that he was so silly or stupid or ignorant. What's the matter with him? He's ought to just shape up. So I grew, you know, kind of impatient with him. Well, at one point later on in his life, actually the last couple years of his life, my mom developed Alzheimer's, dementia, and I would call, and I'd call and check in on them every day. I lived in Washington State, they lived in Indiana. How's it going? Well, for about a stretch of about 10 days running, my mom's crying every day. I said, Mom, are you crying? No, I'm fine. What? I think you're crying. What? No, it's nothing. I'm fine. Are you sure you're fine? No, I'm fine. So after 10 days running of her crying, I said, okay, that's it. I'm not getting off the phone till you tell me what is the matter. Why are you crying? She said, well, it's your dad. And I said, what's he doing? Well, he just fusses at me all the time. I sat here in my chair, and I've got my Kleenexes and my art projects and stuff, and he's a neatnik, and he just comes around and he's worrying about this and worrying. He's just such a worrywart. So I say, put him on the phone. So I'm going to read him the riot act. So I said, Dad, why are you worrying about Mom? She's medically compromised, and you can't just be on her case all the time. Well, it's just a mess. She's just living in a little pigsty over there, and it just bothers me. Well, I know, Dad, but and he's got a comeback for everything I say. And I get more frustrated, totally outside in. Me. So finally I said to him, Dad, what am I supposed to do? Just leave you alone and just let you die a miserable last few years here and let you make life miserable for my mother? Should I just leave you alone? Is that what you want? And he says, please, please, leave me alone. When he said that, it just shattered me. I thought, my first thought was, why the heck did I ask him that? Because now he's told me Yeah, you remember you said, leave me alone? Well, I don't think you're leaving me alone now, are you? I thought, I regretted asking that question. And I started to cry. And it just broke my heart. And little did I know, but suddenly I got inside out. And I'm sobbing. And I don't know what to say, so I think I'll just say everything I just said, I'll just say it again. What am I supposed to do? You're on my mom, da-da-da-da-da. But for some reason, I said it like, I think I said it with such a humility. My ego got out of the way. And I was just being real and honest. And my wife was in the other room, and she said the hairs stood up on the back of her neck because she thought, oh my God, Keith is finally getting honest with his dad. She said, I've never known him to be honest. My dad was 83 years old. And so I say I just say again, and I thought, well, that's it. I've lost my dad now. I've lost any chance of reforming my dad. And he says, well, I just don't know how not to be aggravated. That's what he says. I just don't know how not to be aggravated. And for some reason, it was like a clarion bell rang in my head. I thought, well, I know how not to be aggravated. I've got this friend. You could call this friend of mine, and she could tell you how not to be aggravated. Well, all right, I'll do it, he says, which shocked me completely. So he calls my friend. Unbeknownst to me, I gave him the number. I never thought he would call. He calls. I'm talking to my mom every day, and several days later, she says, what's gotten into your dad? And I said, well, what do you mean? She said, well, he's been so kind. And she said, you know what he does? She says, we've been married 65 years. She says, last night he comes in, every night he's been coming in, waking up in the middle of the night, getting out of bed, coming into she slept in her chair. She had one of those lift chairs that would go back. She said, he comes in and he makes sure the quilt is tucked in around my feet and makes sure my feet are warm. She said, he's never done anything like that in all these many years. Why is he doing that now? And I said, I have no idea. And then I thought, oh my gosh, I wonder if he called my friend. So I called my friend. She says, yeah, I talked to your dad. And I said, what did you talk about? He says, well, he lives in Indiana. So she says, the first half of the appointment was talking about the Pacers, the basketball team. And then he says, oh, wait, there's something I was supposed to ask you. Oh, yeah. How can I not get so aggravated? So she says, oh, well, let's see, okay. Now, aggravation is a feeling, and it happens when you're thinking aggravated. And it doesn't come from what you're aggravated about. It's coming from your aggravated thinking. You're feeling your aggravated thinking in the moment. And the problem is it looks like it's coming from someplace it's not. And he says, oh. He says, what you're talking about is the golden rule. And she says, well, yeah, I guess it is. I guess that is yeah, okay, I'm talking about the golden rule. And he says, well, thank you very much. She says, you've been very helpful. And for the last 3 years of his life, he was a happy camper. He didn't worry. He wasn't mean or aggravated. He was And he declined and died, but he was a completely different person from that one conversation. And I thought to myself, how stupid am I that for most all of my life, I judged him and wanted him to change, wanted him to be better, tried to change him. When they moved, there was a stack of CDs that I had sent him through the years, most all of which had never been opened, on how to stop worrying or whatever, and books. It didn't do him any good until I gave up. When my heart was broken and I quit trying to change him, I changed. And when I changed, look what happened. So the source magically is within you. Now that wasn't confrontation, but it was honesty, it was love, but it was different than anything I'd ever done before. So I think as helpers, it's really hard to spot that you're the problem. It just looks like the other guy. It looks like the patient, it looks like the supervisor, it looks like the husband, it looks like your kids. It's like spotting yourself, like Shakespeare said, oh, what a gift he would give us if we could see ourselves as others see us. If we could really do an interview around your friends and really get them all to really be bluntly honest and incisive, they would probably have a pretty good spot on your outside in thinking. My wife knew I was outside in with my dad, and she'd given up. She thought, well, I guess he'll just live with that, and they'll never have an intimate conversation. Haha, we showed her. We got it done. But how do you change, how do you change the world? You change yourself. I mean, you've heard it a million times, but where you change yourself is where you're outside in. If your outside inness is a misunderstanding of where you think your feelings are coming from, and if you see that, there's some kind of evolution lying latent inside of you that will wake up, and your heart and your soul and your spirit and the meaning and the truth of you will be brought to bear. And again and again and again. It's really easy to see where other people don't get it. And it's really hard to see where you don't. But believe me, you don't get it. There are places where you don't get it. And this is a spotter. This little guy right here, that little line. And you put the same content on both sides of any problem you got, and you look at it, and you will get, it will take away, resilience is the insight that removes the power of a thing to make you feel. And you realize, see, I'd lived under the thumb of the misunderstanding that my complaints about my dad were coming from his worry. And I didn't see it. And I teach this stuff. But you don't see it till you see it, and when you see it, you feel like the biggest fool on the block. I had a client said to me, she says, what do you call this stuff anyway? This is, I don't know, is this reverse psychology? What the heck are you dealing with here? And I said, well, we call it 3 principles psychology. She said, I think you should call it flathead therapy. That's what she says. I said, why flathead therapy? She said, because I keep going, duh, duh, duh. She says, if I keep doing this, I'm going to wind up with a dent in my forehead. So, what takes things off your mind? So let's go through these. I want to read these, reflect on them, tell you a little, maybe a little, add a little something. These are in order. There's, I think, 7 of these and then a description. Really important aspects. Flat earth thinking. So we call this flat earth thinking because when you see, like when I saw that it wasn't my dad that was my problem, it was my thinking about my dad. That this chronic problem I had was in my thinking about my dad, not in my dad. It really blew up all this problem I'd had for all these years. So I thought the feeling of my dad was coming from my dad to some degree. But when I saw absolutely, completely, clearly it was coming from my thinking about my dad, it broke my heart, but it changed my mind. It broke my heart because I realized I had no chance to change him, but I found a chance to change me. And when I found that, things took off. So inside out, flat earth thinking is what is rendered obsolete. So there's thinking you have now that you don't need, that you don't know you don't need, so you're keeping it. You see with insight that you don't need it, you're going to evolve, and that thinking is going to be rendered obsolete. And what thinking is it? It's flat earth thinking. Like we're saying it as we're calling it flat earth thinking because if the world was never flat, right? We didn't make it round. It was always round. It looked flat. Sailors wouldn't sail outside of land because of the threat of falling off the edge. Painters painted pictures about ships being swept over the edge. There was no such thing. There's no edge. Never had been, never would be. But believed it created a misunderstanding that frightened sailors for thousands and thousands of years. Your mind is quieted through subtraction. So whenever I saw this about my dad, I got very sober, very humbled, very, very warm, very heartfelt, I changed. Oh, this is the other thing that happened. If you'd asked me to list 50 best friends, I never would have even thought to put my dad on there. He went to the top of my best friend list. Just bang, he just went from, he wasn't even on the list. So, and then he went to the top, like we just enjoyed one another's company so much the last few years of his life. It was amazing. All because of me. Get it amazing? Your mind is quieted through subtraction of the obsolete thinking you no longer believe in. So something's taken away. This is a reduction. A reduction of thought, program, insight. Less to think about, more to be present with. Outside in, we're fooled by a flat earth thinking. We believe it to be true, innocently. And this thinking fills up your head. So I had this thought of him and his worry. What's the matter him? What's the matter him? I even threw my grandmother in there. What's the matter her? Is intractable. And I found good reason to condemn him. This thinking preoccupies our mind, and here's the thing about outside-in thinking. It has babies. Outside-in thinking has babies. So it's like you give them, it's like rabbits or something like that. They just multiply like, pretty soon you got a whole room full, and then they've overrun the house, and then they're in the yard, and then they're in the neighbor's yard, and it just goes on and on. It's just unbelievable how much it fills your head, and you're thinking those thoughts, so you're feeling those feelings, so you get panicked, you get judgmental, you get overwhelmed. You get overwhelmed with rabbits. The rabbits of your thinking are, and it doesn't take them, like rabbits, they have a gestation period. There's none of that going on. It's like, it's instant, exponential multiplication. Nasty business. Okay, separate realities. I love this one. This is the magic of relationships. You see how separate realities works. It just opens up a whole new realm of possibilities. Inside out. Inside out, we do not waste time being dismayed that others do not think like us. This puts us in the position to respect and embrace diversity rather than be annoyed or afraid of it. We understand, you get it, I actually cannot have your thoughts, and you actually cannot have mine. No one can think the same as anyone else. I wish someone would have told me this a long time ago, because I thought that the main idea was find those that think like me and hang out with them, and then fine-tune them and get them to think even more like me, and then we'd be even closer friends. A lot of work. As much as I may think it would be better if you would think like me, it cannot happen. Game over. No sense of putting any more effort into that futility. It doesn't work that way. It's completely, you're chasing, I don't know, what is it, chasing rainbows or chasing butterflies? It's a myth. It's a myth. This, and surprisingly, quitting that job immediately puts you in the position to better and better listen and communicate. You share yourself, you listen, because you're not going to meet anyone else that thinks like you, so you can really have that off your mind, and you don't have to judge them because they can't think like you, so you get a chance to really drink them in. And I can't believe how much better my listening is. Like, my wife and I marvel at it all the time. She'll say, go into the kitchen and get me 12 things, and I say, anything else? And she's like, no, and I know she's like waiting for me to forget something, but I seldom do. And before, I couldn't remember 2 out of 3 things that I went in there to get. Like, I'd go in there and think, wait, what was that? Because I was thinking about why she should be asking me to get, does she really need this? Isn't there someone else that could do this? What's wrong? What are you, lazy or something? You could get your own things. I had a million little outside-in baby thoughts, and they were rapidly having offspring. And I didn't even know I was doing it. And it wasn't until I saw this paradigm that my mind quieted, and I realized, oh my gosh, I have been so busy-minded my whole life, and I couldn't listen. You can't listen if you're busy-minded. There's no way. It's impossible. You might as well be trying to drink the Pacific Ocean or something. You can't do it because it's too much. You can't expect a person to listen who's busy-minded. And you can't listen if you're busy-minded. Less on your mind, the better communicator you'll be. Really important in relationships. When we believe in the outside-in false paradigm, separate realities, they're just not obvious to us. It's like, okay, so when others do not think like us, we think, seemingly justifiably so, there's either something wrong with them or us. I guess I just didn't explain it well enough. Or what's wrong with their listening? This illusion stirs up unnecessary false outside-in thinking and reactions. We stay trapped in the illusion that we could or should think and feel the same. So once you accept the impossible tenet that separate realities doesn't exist, you're in for a run on thinking about things, worrying about things, thinking about things that don't really matter, trying to get other people to think like you. You don't have to do it. It's a job you can quit. You can all resign from it today. We've got, Lynn, you want to hand out the getting other people to think like me resignation papers? I think, see how many people, there's 42. Raise your left hand. I'm going to get you to all swear. I'll never do that again the rest of my life. And a little drop of blood on that thing wouldn't be a bad idea. It's just so much fun to relinquish that job. Let's do another one. Everybody doing okay? I know it's a little after lunch. We'll do another one and we'll take a break. So a paradigm, I mean, one of the cool things about a paradigm is there's no exceptions to it. It's like rock solid, that's it. It's just, it's not about you, it's about how it works. So it's not, there's something impersonal about it. Something like I feel like like what we're doing here, and with my cases and consultations I do now, we're all sitting here looking at the diagram and going like, yeah, that's a good point. So it's like there's a fair arbitrator in the room that sorts things out for me and for you that is not a belief system or a good idea, or it's a fantastic neutral party brought to the table that you can use against, you can press your problems to this logic. And you press your thinking to this logic, things will stick out that you don't need. And you can drop them. So it's like it gives you a truth-telling way to resolve what's up and get the ego out. Because the ego is the sticky wicket of human relationships. And it doesn't work outside in. There is no outside in. So the 100% solution, this is a paradigm of no exceptions. Feelings are 100% of the time coming from thinking in the moment. If we're thinking it, we're feeling it. There's a t-shirt design in there somewhere. If we're thinking it, we're feeling it. If thought in the moment is not included, we will not have a psychological experience. There's another one. That's pretty cool. Thought in the moment's not included, no experience, no psychological experience for anyone on earth, bar none. That's like, this is cross-cultural. It's true in Japan. It's true for Al-Qaeda, or it's true for anyone, anywhere, anytime. We've got a common denominator psychology. Understanding this one psychological truth automatically quiets our mind, our thinking, and aligns us with the paradigm of resilience. The experience of this truth acts as a doorway to deeper thoughts and feelings. It's got a pull, it's directional. There's a direction to this. It just keeps feeding you, teaching you, helping you, changing you, evolving you. And it's just terrific. So there's an absolute direction and an inevitable evolution and a built-in self-correction that's just going to keep going. So the resilience factor that you've had will get maximized, and you'll get the chance to bounce further along and quit having 2 steps forward and 1 step back. You can take 3 steps forward, 4 steps forward, 5 steps forward, 1 step back. That really makes a big difference in your own progress. The experience of this truth acts as a doorway to deeper thoughts and feelings. The definitive black and white nature of thought in the moment included. So here's where we come in with our, so this is what my wife calls, she says, your poster is so 3rd grade. I think it's an insult, don't you, when someone says that? I didn't take it that way. I thought, well, thank you very much. That means simple, right? So, thought in the moment. See, here we go with the 3rd grade part. Thought in the moment included. Thought in the moment not included. Same thing, just different. Like sometimes people get a little, they got to think about it in a new way to kind of get the idea. So included thought, something comes to you with this 100% solution. This is really true. But it provides a new, fresh way to understand what you're going through, because you're going to have outside-in misunderstanding today. You may be sitting in outside understanding at this very second. I don't know. But you can tell there's a difference between inside out and outside in. It feels different. It feels, when you have outside in going on, there's an edge of anxiety, discouragement, stress, forlorn, despair. A little bit, there's something that's kind of against the grain. You're swimming upstream and you feel like you don't really have the energy, or there's something's in your way, there's a barrier, and you can tell it. Inside out, there's no such thing happening. You're just free to be right here, look around, see what's up, be you. You get a chance to be who you really are in the moment. Outside in. Now, here's the deal. If you're 99% inside out and 1% outside in, you're screwed. You're screwed. I'm telling you, it's 100%. And if you leave the door open, you're in a mixed paradigm. And if you're in a mixed paradigm, it ain't gonna work. You gotta see it. It's 100%. It's not 99-1 or 80-20. I thought 80-20 was good enough. I thought, 80-20, come on, I'm 80% inside out. But those 20% guys were responsible for 100% of my misery. 100%. So it wasn't like it was fair. Like, if you're 1% outside in, that 1% is responsible for 100% of your misery. See what I'm saying here? It's totally worth it to consider it as all thought. Thought in the moment included is the reality. You can't have it without thought being included. It's 100%. Some measure less than 100% immediately creates the illusion of a second paradigm. See, you make up a second option. You think, well, that's true for most people, but I got my own deal going on here. You can't have your own deal going on. It doesn't work out. This suggests you can have experience without thought in the moment included. This adds, believe it or not, that little thing, that little mistake, causes all the psychological problems of the world. It adds a never-ending number of possible causes for our feelings. If a paradigm worked this way, it would necessarily be full of exceptions and anomalies. That's not a paradigm. Complexity and a busier mind are an inevitable outcome of this misunderstanding. Inevitable. You make up a mixed paradigm, a mixed idea, inevitably you're going to have you're going to feel conflicted and torn, troubled in your own experience. Not because you're a tormented, troubled person, because you've got a paradigm. All the troubled people on the planet have a paradigm problem. It's not a personality problem or a past problem or a how they were raised problem, values problem, religion problem. It's a paradigm problem.